everybody. It's Romania Black. And wow, I don't know what to think anymore about Revolutionary Girl Utena, because last week we had an hour and a half long discussion for episode 9, and this episode here will mark us being at the 1/4, 25% through the series mark, and I have really enjoyed this series so far. It has been a lot of fun. It has been bonkers in the best way, and I'm having a lot of fun theorizing and talking about it. Last week was kind of like a floodgate open, and it's like, oh, okay, which I have a feeling with this series, based on the track record so far, I have a feeling that it's either going to go one of two ways. Either we've opened the floodgates and everything is going to be insanity from here on in, or it's going to do like it's kind of been doing and do peaks and valleys, where you'll have like a couple episodes of like, oh my God. And then they're like, here's Nanami going skydiving in the Alps. And then you go back and you're like, ah, here's Nanami getting chased by ransors. And so you're like, I feel like it's going to go one of two ways. Either we've got on the roller coaster and it's not going to stop, or we're going to do our roller coaster is going to take some dips and turns, which I'm fine with. It's nice when things are intense to have like an episode or two of like breathing room. And I kind of feel like the series has set us up to expect that, because I feel like that was very intentional, and it could not be, but in my mind, I'm like, okay, they set up that they're going to have like crazy episodes and then down episodes, crazy episodes and then some levity, crazy episodes and then some grounded stuff, to try to make you used to that right off the bat. So that when it happens later on in the series, you're not like, well, that was a filler episode that came out of nowhere. You'll be used to the formula by then. So I've got a couple comments. HBanana7 pointed out that the roses that are used in the duel by Anthe that she puts on everybody's little lapels, those could be from the garden. And I was like, oh yeah, she does have like an endless supply of peace roses that she could use for the duels. I didn't know if Anthe would be the type to chop up her own roses and bring them to the duel, but she could be. So that could be an excuse. That could be a reason. That was interesting. And then I've got some comments from Oliver Jajado. One was talking about, back in episode 5, the idea that Miki could have a what's called a Madonna whore complex. And we're not talking about the singer Madonna, because at first I was like Material Girl? No. What we're talking about is he idealizes Anthe like a Madonna, like a holier than thou, epitomizes Anthe as this pure and innocent beacon. But then he sees his sister as not matching up with that nostalgic idealism that he's put on Anthe, so she's just automatically trash, which is the Madonna whore complex. And it would kind of make sense if we're going the psychological route with that, because his twin sister kind of does, like, you know, whether or not she did anything with Kiryuu, she kind of, you know, played up that persona or that archetype. So I find that interesting. I was like, oh, okay. All right, interesting enough. And then they had noted on Patreon through YouTube that they had some notes from episode 5, the Sunlit Garden finale. So here is what they noted. Around the time in production, I read an interview with a certain pair of pop idols in a magazine I was thumbing through at the store. Our motto is, get a hold of eternity. It's a brilliantly glittering thing. And I was a little surprised. Get hold of eternity was such an abstract phrase. And yet, for some reason, I readily accepted it. It was as if from that single phrase, I could indirectly sense the details that shaped their personalities, the look of the place where they grew up, what they saw of the current affairs on the TV news, the manga, anime, and popular songs that affected them. Call it empathy between contemporaries. When I brought it up with Inokido, who was doing the screenplays, what did he have to say here? He was on board. Up until that point, we'd spent a lot of time arguing in the abstract about the spirit of the show, but I felt like it was a few words from these pop idols that got us into the heart of the matter. At the same time, the process of producing this two-parter set up episodes that brought home to me again that Utena is a story about the relationships between characters. When you get right down to it, this series is a story about the relationship between Utena and Anthe. So I decided to apply that same style to the stories of the supporting characters as well. From then on, I would be very conscious of get hold of eternity and a story about relationships as key motifs of the show. Well, what a great time to read that, because last episode we had exactly that. We talked about eternity, and it was mainly about the relationships between Saionji and Kiryuu and all that. Oh, that was such good timing because I am all about character-driven shows. And here we are. The whole motif of the show is about the idea of getting a hold of eternity, what makes that for each of us, and about their relationships and how they develop. Awesome. Oliver, that is amazing. Yes, please. Thank you so much. I also realized over the course of the series, I was like, am I saying this correctly? Am I saying Utena or is it something different? So this is how messed up language is. I went to Google Translate, which is not the best source, of course. Here's what they tell me in English how to say it.
Utena.
Utena. Okay. Utena instead of Utena. Fine. But still the
Utena.
Utena. Fine. But then I go over to Japanese.
Utena.
Utena. So it's like Utena, Utena. I know I may say her name incorrect and I apologize ahead of time. Work with me. Humor me. But I was just like, so they say
Utena.
Utena. Utena sounds, it just sounds so strange coming out of my mouth. Utena. Utena. It's like the ooh, I don't know. I think of, it's so weird. Utena. I don't know. It might say Utena. If I say Utena, I'm sorry. You just have to humor me. Forgive me. Could be worse. So yeah. But I'm really excited, y'all, to dive into this episode and see what all we get. But yeah, a show about relationships. I'm down. And about getting a hold of eternity, I'm down. Last episode, Kiryuu is part of this game, potentially with the prince. We're not for sure. But he has basically, supposedly, gotten Saionji expelled from the school. And NANAMI, I'm sure, is going to be mad about her precious brother being hurt and is probably, since Saionji isn't around, going to blame Anthy or going to blame Utena. So, what do we do? What do we do? But in any case, we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to dive right into episode 10 and see what we get. And we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's see those sweet, sweet roses. OMG. Kiryuu! Touga! I know. I've been told in the comments that most people call him Touga and not Kiryuu, but Kiryuu just rolls off the tongue so much easier for me. And like I said last episode, he's called another character that's similar to Touga, and I don't want to get those confused, but Touga Kiryuu, what a bitch. He is the antagonist of the series right now. And I'm like, oh! And so I just, ooh, he is pretty much the antagonist of the series. And the thing about it is we don't know what the prince is going to be like. So, I mean, we'll put the prince up here, right? The prince, as far as we know, is connected to the power of Dios, right? Because Kiryuu has expressed as much. And also that power of Dios is connected from the prince to Anthy. So there are questions with all of this and what this means. Does it mean that the prince and Anthy are two sides of the same person, maybe? Two sides of the same person? Could it mean that? Are they two separate people? There's another question with that. Are they two separate people in that? Is the prince and the power of, is the prince the power of Dios itself? Is he just like a physical embodiment of that power, just like Anthy possesses that power and it inhabits Anthy, right? Is the power from the prince? There's a lot of questions about Anthy and the prince and like, are they the same person? Because I thought about that with the ED. You have Utena. Utena is influenced by the concept of the prince, right? She's influenced by the concept of the prince. But in turn, she becomes a prince herself to Anthy. And is it just like a big recycle symbol where it's like Anthy's from the prince and the prince influences Utena who becomes the prince for Anthy and it just like circle of lives the whole way through? I don't know. We'll talk about that and the concept. Or is the power of Dios as well is the power of Dios, which is, you know, essentially the power of God, blah, blah, blah. The concept of protecting someone else. And is that what makes you like a god, essentially? I mean, if you kind of want to get a little philosophical and kind of broad with it, and again, this is like broad context, when you think about, you know, Christianity, for example, God is the supernatural being that protects you. Whatever happens, as long as God is with you, you are going to be protected, whether it's physically or spiritually or whatever. That's the whole concept. It's this notion of infallible protection, no matter what happens to you, whether it's protecting your soul or your physical body or a family member. That's kind of the concept of it. And if you are able to protect someone, you kind of do feel larger than life. You do feel kind of omnipotent in that moment, being like, I'll protect you from whatever and anything. And you kind of feel infallible. And so for the first time, Utena has experienced this moment where she wasn't able to protect someone. So let's break down, because Utena was very interesting in this episode. She was a lot different than she normally is, right? So we have this concept from the last episode that Utena, the earliest we know about her is that she was a sad grieving girl who was powerless to protect her parents. And that powerlessness projected and manifested into her feeling useless. Right? And so that's where she was at. And then she met the prince, right? She met the prince, and we're going to put prince in quotation marks because the memory in this movie, this series is questionable. She met the prince who gave her this notion that she could protect others and be powerful. Now, did the prince exactly say those words? Well, no, he said it a little bit differently. But what did Utena get from, what did she, glean from that encounter with the prince? Well, she got the notion that she could protect others and be powerful just like him. And that's kind of what she's been doing. So meanwhile, she's kind of adopted this prince persona. And let it guide her life. But now she's come to this moment where she could not protect Kiryuu and Anthe at the same time. And someone ended up getting hurt, which is not what she wanted at all. And so now we're going to talk about it when we get to that scene, but Utena's kind of, I was really sad about this episode because I was like, oh girl, you're not your normal self, but we're going to talk about it. I think it's going to end up making her a stronger character in the long haul, but we're going to touch back on it after we get past this opening and get to Saionji leaving the school. Can we talk about Saionji's drip? Saionji looks amazing in this. He's got like the denim jacket, the dark denim jeans that would make Kogami from Psycho-Pass envy. So, and he's got his like giant hobo knapsack. Like seeing Saionji, it's kind of like I coach a professional like public speaking team and everybody always wears suits. So when you go to a competition, everybody's always wearing like a suit. It's kind of like a uniform and everyone looks different because suits are different, but there is a classy professional look that everybody has. Then when you go out and see them outside of their suits and they're in casual clothes, you get a better sense of who they are. And here, damn, Saionji looks great. He looks good. He looks wonderful. And he honestly is a lot more stoic and accepting of getting expelled than I expected him to be. I expected him to be a lot more angry about it, but he really isn't. And so then there's the big notice, and he just keeps walking. He's cool guys walk away from explosions. Saionji is not going to pay them any mind. He is not going to let it bother him. And Utena, of course, Utena feels bad because she's like, not only was she not able to protect Kiryuu, which caused this whole situation, Kiryuu caused this whole situation. But anyway, Utena doesn't know that. But she also, caused Saionji to get expelled. And say what you want about Saionji, he didn't deserve to get expelled. necessarily, although he was gonna hit Utena, so maybe, who knows? I'm like, girl, you should not feel bad about yourself because it really wasn't your fault. But she feels like it is. She has a chip on her shoulder thinking she should have done something. I want to put something up here. That we have Saionji, we have Nanami, we have Yuri, or Jury. Jury, who is in a Yuri. We have Jury. And we have Mickey. And then we have Kiryuu. We're going to put them all up here, right? And then we have Utena. We'll put her up here as well. Okay. So we'll touch back on these names here in a minute. But Utena does feel bad that she essentially thinks she caused this. So we have this line here. They're like, did you hear about Saionji? The following student has been punished with expulsion for flagrant violation of the Academy's Code of Conduct. High school second year, class A, Saionji Kyoichi. Oh, so it isn't Tenjo. It's Kyoichi. The provost said that of Otori Academy. So yeah, so he ends up getting expelled. Did you hear what he did? So then you have Jury and Mickey over the sidelines questioning what this is. And basically the reason he got expelled, as far as they know, is because he started a personal duel to take back the Rose Bride without permission. And I'm like, but the thing about it is they don't know he was set up by Kiryuu. They don't know about the end of the world letter that was forged. And I give Saionji props. Saionji could have been a total bitch about it and been like, well, I got a letter from End of the World and I did this and that. He just takes it. He just takes the L and go. It's like he's over it at this point. He's like, you know what? I'm just gonna go. I'm just gonna take it and go, and I'm not gonna cause any more drama. And I kind of respect Saionji for that. If it had been me in that position, which one, I don't think I would have gotten to that place, but if I had, I'd been pulling up that letter and being like, do y'all not see this? I clearly had a right to duel, and what is this? So interesting. But I like that Mickey says he thought that Saionji would eventually do it, but now he's kind of surprised. He's like, now that he's actually done it, he's like, could I really say that it was in character? And then Yuri, she's like, he turned out to be the clown of the student council. And I was like, oh my God. I was kind of joking about it back early on in the series, but now I kind of feel bad for him because everybody else they're just like, he was never one of us. You know, Lion King 2 soundtrack is playing, not one of us, and goes from there. Which, you know what? It is funny and almost seems kind of like it was going to end up that way because he was never in the opening with the student council when they did their Team Rocket opening. He was never at any of the council meetings. He was never around any of them. So it's almost like he was only there because he got that ring, probably from Kiryuu. Probably. Has Kiryuu been giving out all these rings for the prince? So then we have, of course, Kiryuu is waiting on him to leave the school. Of course he is. Of course he is. And I'm like, what gets me is that we saw him get sliced from behind. I guess it somehow hit his arm too. But I'm like, but did it? I didn't see that. I thought it just hit his back. But apparently it did because he's all like, oh no, poor me. And I'm like, really, Kiryuu? You jumped in knowing exactly what you were doing. And then Kiryuu has a lot of audacity in this episode. I wanted to say the phrase, the audacity, so many times. Because Kiryuu, for him to be like, oh, I'm going to do everything I can to get this expulsion overturned as fast as I can. I'm like, bitch, you caused this expulsion. What are you talking about? Of course you're going to do it. I'm like, you can't trust a word Kiryuu says. Can't trust a word. He is lying through his teeth, right? You can't trust a single word he says. Well, who he reminds me of a little bit from Neon Genesis is a character called Kyouji from Neon Genesis. But Kyouji is, I think, obviously Kiryuu is kind of a double agent. He seems to be in cahoots with the end of the world, but we're going to talk about that. But then he wants the power of Dios to himself. So it kind of makes him seem like a double agent, which Kyouji in Neon Genesis kind of was. The difference is, for me, in Neon Genesis, Kyouji did have specific characters that he cared about, and a lot of his motivations and actions were based around those one or two characters that he did care about and cared about their future. Not a lot of characters, but he did have one or two, maybe three, that he was doing certain things for and would kind of bend a little bit depending on their safety. Kiryuu doesn't care about anyone, it seems, except himself. And I'm like, oh, he is definitely an antagonist. And I thought he'd be the antagonist, but there's like Yuri and Saionji and Mickey are over here, and Nanami being like, they're antagonists, but Kiryuu is the antagonist right now. Unless the prince and all this turns out to be an even bigger antagonist, which it very well could be the twist, and that could be it. Kiryuu is the antagonist of the series. He's the bad guy. He's doing all this shit behind the scenes and manipulating people for his own ends, whatever they are. Because he wants eternity more than anybody else. And he's like, oh, well, I'm sorry to add to your troubles. I like that Saionji was like, could you give this journal to Anthy? Could you give the exchange diary? And then Kiryuu lies like a damn snake. He's like, oh, I'll make sure to get it to her. Say no more. And Saionji's like, oh, I'm sorry to keep being a nuisance until the very end. Like, he walks away, dad ass. And I'm just like, Kiryuu, Saionji, Kiryuu, you watched him walk away, and then you chucked that into the fire. And Kiryuu's like, oh, don't worry about it. We're best friends, after all. The bestest of friends. And after he says we're best friends, you know what he does? He chucks the book into the fire. Bitch. Last time I saw a furnace and shit about to go down, it was Croco's basketball. But even that guy was a bitch, and somebody was nice to him. Oh my God. I'm still not over that he just took that diary and said we're best friends, and then he chucked it into the flames. He, did that because he's like, this is stupid, and you're not getting to her, so never mind. So things that Kiryuu does. Kiryuu, he wants to keep others away from Anthy, except Utena, because she is drawing out the prince, and the prince is connected to this power of Dios that we know that Kiryuu wants. And Kiryuu wants to find a way to get to it. However that works out. How that's going to work. How Kiryuu thinks he's going to get the power of Dios when it's within Nanami, or not within Nanami, when it's, I'm looking at the title page, when it's within Anthy and Utena's the only one who can draw it out. I don't know what he thinks he's going to do. I don't know how he thinks that chumming up to Utena is going to get him that power or not. I don't know how that works, but I'm sure he's thinking of something. But it's just the idea that I think he realized that Saionji, here's the thing, Mickey and Yuri are not going to beat Utena. They're not. And I think they have level heads enough that they won't really challenge Utena unless the end of the world tells them to, right? Saionji has proven that now he won't necessarily listen and wait until the end of the world. He would do it on impulse, even though he did do it by the end of the world's letter. Let's be clear. But I feel like maybe Kiryuu, no, you gotta bring it here, buddy. He's barking over this toy. I feel like Kiryuu realizes that Saionji is potentially a threat to this whole thing going down. Because Mickey and Yuri seem oblivious. They seem like they don't get anything Kiryuu is doing behind the scenes. And Nanami, she's so blinded by her brother worship that she's not going to go against Kiryuu at all. Mickey and Yuri aren't close enough to him to really know what he's doing behind the scenes, so they're kind of left in the dark. But Saionji is close enough to Kiryuu that I think Kiryuu is worried that he would figure it out. He would get a little too close and possibly ruin Kiryuu's plans. So part of this was, I'm going to get Saionji out of the way and then move forward with whatever my plans are. I don't know what Saionji's going to do. I can't believe he's gone. I can't believe he's out of the picture and expelled. I thought for sure that maybe they would be trying. I know that Kiryuu says he's going to work his hardest to overturn it, but that shit ain't happening. No, he's going to keep him as far away as he can while he's working this out. So it would be really cool if, you know how in a lot of movies there's a character that gives the main character a lot of grief early on. It's a tried and true trope, but there's a lot of movies where there's this character at the beginning of the series. They give the main character a lot of grief. And then when the main character gets to a low point and they step back away from the other characters and away from the plot, they end up running into that character again, and that character ends up kind of fostering them to move back to the plot, and it leads into the climax. What I'm saying is, this could work like Ricky Bobby from Talladega Nights, where in Talladega Nights, Ricky Bobby, side note, his dad is a main character at the very beginning. He's kind of like a vagabond, kind of vagrant, kind of like this, transient dad figure that's kind of negligent. And he's away from the story for most of it. But then when Ricky Bobby, Will Ferrell's character, is at his lowest point and he is in a slump, in comes the dad, who was once an antagonist and is now helping the protagonist get back on their feet, get their spirits up so they can get in shape and then go back and take on the antagonist at the end of the story. I'm thinking that Utena is going to get down to her lowest point and she's going to have to step away from Anthony and from everybody and be like, I don't know what to do. And then Saionji's going to show up and he's going to be like, bitch, I fought you in the first episode and you weren't like this back then. Pick yourself up and let's go take him on. And he's like, I'm going to go with you and do all this. I'm waiting for that to happen. I'm waiting for Anthony to get separated from Utena, and Utena needs a pep talk, and then Saionji's going to show up in them jeans and that denim jacket, and he's going to be like, let's go. And I'm going to be waiting for it. I really am. But we'll see if that happens. Sorry, I went on that tangent. So this episode's called NANAMI'S Precious Thing, which is her love of her brother. Honestly, I can't trust Kiryuu at all anymore. Knowing that he forged that one letter to get Saionji to do what he wants, who the hell knows if he's just making up all these letters? How do we know that he's not? It's like, we received a new letter from the end of the world. How do we know it's not him? The other one was forged. And they're like, Touga would normally be the next to duel, but his wounds haven't healed yet. Imagine that. And again, Kiryuu doesn't want to battle Anthy for the power of Dios, which is interesting to me why he doesn't want to be a duelist. He, by all rights, could, but instead he's trying to be like this double agent and work behind the scenes to get what he wants. And so he doesn't really want to be front and center in the duel. He doesn't want to reveal any of his cards, right? Which is fascinating to me. So yes, then Jury's like, I'll go. And Mickey's like, no, I'm going to go. And they both fight about it. And he's like, oh, no, there's another duelist. I like that Mickey just has that stopwatch come out of nowhere. Like, what? When the other duelist win? Like, it's like there was 30 seconds till the twist of the scene came. And then this was the moment, right? I just think the stopwatch is a fun little touch, right? It doesn't really have a reason, but it's just there. And I like that Jury's like, wait, since when did we have another duelist? Who decided these rules? When did they come on the scene? And Kiryuu's like, Kiryuu's like, oh, I know, but you don't know yet. What? What a smug bastard. What a smug bastard. Like, I really want to know how they all got their rings, because we know how Utena got hers from the prince, supposedly. Did Kiryuu distribute all these rings? How did they all get to them? Did they show up in the mail? Did an owl carry them to them? Who knows? The other thing is, Utena being in the garden is interesting to me. Utena being in the garden, which is normally where Anthy would go, is interesting to me as well. So she was in the garden where NANAMI found her. And the garden is kind of like this sanctuary / prison altogether of the soul. Right? And so what's interesting is that Utena is really down on her self-worth in this moment, because she believes that she's failed as a person because she couldn't protect Kiryuu in that moment, and that's what she's supposed to be able to do. And so she immediately questions everything about herself, and I'm like, whoa, girl, you don't have to do that. And it's very kind of disconcerting at first it's very hard at first to see Utena be this, like, meek. She's normally not meek or submissive or, passive in any way. She's normally, like, take charge and dominant and all this. And this is the first time we kind of see her flounder a little bit, which is interesting, right? So there was like a part of me watching this scene that of course was like, girl, don't be like that. Don't be questioning whether or not ladies have to rely on men to save them. Like, don't be like that. Come on now. And of course Nanami, like, you know, gets onto her and she's like, oh brother, it's you. And he's like, oh, well, my injuries aren't worth you fighting. Rescuing imperiled ladies is the duty of a knight. So that is such a manipulative line right there. He just like goes for the jugular and just cuts her, right? So it puts Kiryuu up here as being manipulative and double-faced, right? He just goes in for the kill with that one line. Just goes in for the kill because he instantly makes her seem like the weak one of the moment. He's like, well, I was a knight and it was my duty to protect others. And then he helps her up and get to her feet and everything. And he's like, well, as long as you're safe, I'm satisfied. Like that moment, he steals her thunder and displays the more dominant persona. And the thing about it is, I don't think Utena realizes that, you know, there doesn't have to be just one alpha male and one alpha in the entire group. There can be multiple dominant people in a room. And of course, Nanami's like, well, I'll never ever forgive you. And then she runs off. And Anthony's like, did I miss something? And of course, Kiryuu's like, oh, don't worry. She's just upset. And deep down, she knows that you weren't at fault. And I'm like, but Kiryuu, you know she doesn't. And you're fueling the fire. Absolutely. Like if Kiryuu just stopped her then and there and explained to her, but that's not what Kiryuu wants to do. He wants to fan the flames. Absolutely. And of course, Utena just feels terrible about the whole situation. And it's really sad to see her like in her slippers, like in between two desks, like crouched up in the fetal position. Like it's really hard to see her like this. And she's like, is it really true that a girl can't be a prince? I don't like the idea that Kiryuu is trying to convince her that she can't be this prince. I feel like I don't know what his game is, because it seems like he knows now that Utena draws out the power of Dios and the power of the prince. Utena is the one that draws out that specific facet of that power. So, but in order for Utena to draw out that power, she has to be in a position where she's protecting somebody and has this sense of duty. So if that's the case, you would think he would want to foster that behavior further, because that would enable him to gather more data or whatever. But instead, I'm like, if you're trying to make her doubt all of that and become this damsel, which is not what she's been this whole time, then how is that going to lure out the prince? I'm very curious for next episode what his game is, like what his point with Utena is and what he's trying to do. But it does seem like in this moment, Utena is questioning everything she's built about herself. Like she had built up this persona and this identity of being this strong, powerful person. And she was subverting all of these gender norms and subverting all these expectations of us being a prince. And now she's like, well, is that even possible? Like she's questioning everything, of course, right? And part of a character growing stronger is they have to go through moments of hurdles and challenges. And this is Utena's first big challenge. Can she still, you know, and that goes back to the idea, what does it mean to be a prince? Is being a prince protecting someone? Or is that concept of protecting someone only limited to being a prince? Can you call it something else? Can it be tied to something besides being a prince or being masculine? Do you have to be a man to protect people? And I feel like this is her first, she's been trying to emulate a man to protect someone else. And now she's faced with the first realization of that not always being possible, or her emulating a man not guaranteeing that she's going to be able to protect someone. So that's going to be the biggest hurdle now, is getting over that notion. And I think that that'd be good for her to realize you don't have to be a man to protect someone. That's not part of the equation. You can protect somebody by being a woman as well. So I like that she's kind of going through this. It feels like she's got to tear herself down before she can build herself back up. Right? But it is very sad to see her like this. Like, I don't like seeing Utena being meek and mild. Anthe, of course, doesn't even care. Anthe is too busy worried about this birthday present than she is anything else. And she's like, oh, what's wrong? You seem depressed. And she's not even talking to Utena. She's talking about the cat. I'm like, damn it. And then she's like, the student council president got hurt protecting me after all. And she's like, I wonder if everything's all right. She's like, that's what I'm worried about. I guess I should go give him a visit, huh? And then that's when Auntie's like, what are you talking about? She's like, I didn't even thank him for saving me. And then she's like, yeah, and you find out Auntie's not even talking to her. She's talking to the cat. And then she's like, what are you? You're talking to that. A lot of roses are blooming right now, and you're visiting him. So no one would ever be displeased to receive flowers. So I think that's interesting. We have Anthe, who always smells of roses, just like the prince, telling Utena she should go and give him flowers because everybody likes flowers when they're feeling down. You know, if you're injured, you always get somebody who's injured flowers. So I think that's interesting. But also Anthe just kind of casually ignoring Utena and her problems. I don't know if that's a sign that Anthe knows that Utena will be okay, or if she's just that aloof and that's just part of her character, or if she truly is a blank slate and she doesn't really know how to process those kind of feelings. I don't know. I also think it is interesting that Anthe, we'll put that over here. Anthe seems to always know what gifts others want, right? She's been doing that this whole time. And I don't know if that's tied to the power of Dios and her character, but with Mickey, it was playing the piano. With Saionji, it's writing in that diary. With Yuri, it is the rose, like what she got from the one girl. Utena doesn't really have anything at the moment, and then we don't know about Kiryuu, but Kiryuu is the cat. So yeah, so she basically tries to give them all the gifts that tie to whatever their desires are or whatever they long for. And it's like, And here's the thing. I don't know if that is the power of Dios working through Angie and she just knows that from that power, or if that's her. I feel so bad for Anthe all the time in this series because she doesn't have any agency for herself. She seems to be powered through this whole thing with Dios, or she's a blank slate that others kind of project upon and she just reflects it back. So there's not really anything that is her own that she can claim as her own identity. And I want Anthe to get to the point where she kind of breaks free from all of this and becomes her own person. And we are only 10 episodes in, so there's lots of time for that to happen. But I do feel bad for her. I like this little moment where Utena is on the ground. She looks over at Anthe, and Anthe kind of has this one moment of cheering her up, being like, just go give him some flowers. It's fine. And Utena's like, that's a good idea. I like this little quiet moment of friendship forging between the two of them. It's really nice. So then we get this flashback of Kiryuu as a child. Of course, he has like the rich family, the bougie family. Him and NANAMI have like the big, amazing like house and all that. I like the touch of making the father voiced by Kiryuu's voice actor as well. That was a good touch. But yeah, so everybody's getting Touga all these presents, and NANAMI, who forgot a present, ends up getting him a kitten. And it's the present that Kiryuu likes the most. And he says, thank you. Now, the kiss that he gives her on the eyes to kiss away her tears is the same type of kiss that the prince gives Utena. So that's just the show making us even more skeptical about all of this. Because I'm like, is Kiryuu? I don't believe in my heart of hearts that Kiryuu is the prince. But Kiryuu is a manipulator. And I wonder if, I mean, it's not an uncommon gesture to kiss someone tears away. It's just very specific and kind of coincidental that it's these two characters. But do I believe that Kiryuu would take advantage of someone thinking he was like that prince? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So do I think Kiryuu is going to keep playing that up? Sure. If Kiryuu turns out to actually be the prince, I won't be surprised. I'll be like, oh, okay. Explain, show. But if he's just manipulating through this, then I won't be surprised either. Who knows? But yeah, she's like, my brother was always so nice and protective, and his smile was for me alone. And she coveted all that. Like Nanami is a jealous woman, and she loves her brother, and she doesn't want anybody else to have him. Of course, this series will not shy away from letting us have our Dorito-shaped torso body of Kiryuu practicing. I'm like, oh, Oh, poor you and your little sling as you're out here practicing sword fighting like Guts. Come on now. Bitch, no. But this part is interesting, where she tells him to stop, and she's like, I don't want anything to happen to you. And in that moment, he puts the arm around her, and I was like, are you going to kiss away her tears? But Kiryuu is such a damn tease, and he knows exactly what he's doing. And a part of me respected him for being like, for saying like, we're not children anymore. I'm not going to kiss you on the cheek. We're not kids. That it doesn't have that same connotation anymore. We're older. It has a different meaning. And I'm not going to lead you on to think that. And a part of me was like, good for you, Kiryuu. Good for you not letting your sister think that. But then everything else he does is a tease to her and emotionally manipulates her. And I'm like, bitch, he's such a great character because of how frustrating he is. You just want to shake him. And he's like, yeah. And then she's like, aren't you going to give me a kiss? And he's like, oh, well, no, we're no longer children. Bye, bitch. He's like, I'm going to bed. And of course she's frustrated by that because, and then we go back to the cat on the edge of the river, and we're going to talk about that. Oh my God. But yeah, Nanami is aware of her jealousy, but she just doesn't actively want to do anything about it. She's just like, no, this is how I am. So anyway, they go to find Kiryuu, and they're like, oh, well, he's gonna be at this bitchin' birthday party. It's like every after school special, like Kiryuu and Nanami are the rich kids who have the big ass mansion. They throw all the ravers. Everybody shows up to their parties. It's this big ordeal. It's his birthday party. Kiryuu has picked the perfect time to put his plan into motion because everything is lining up just perfectly. I love all the 80s and 90s fashion of this, all the dresses. Nanami's wardrobe, girl, is on point every episode. The black with the big sleeves, I'm living. I want it. I want to wear it right now. And so Anthony's like, she's like, aren't you where he has a birthday every year? And Utena's like, I just moved here. She's like, how would I know he has a birthday every year? I just arrived here, Anthony. Come on now. And I liked it. She's like, weren't you aware? And Utena's like, weren't you? And she's like, yes, that's why I brought this gift. The one episode that Anthe is more aware about everything going on than anyone else. I just love when she's like, of course I knew. And I was like, so funny. So damn funny. I love it. Meanwhile, Jury is like, I'm getting nothing out of this birthday party. Who's the other duelist? Quit edging us. And he's like, that's my job in this show. And he's like, I'm not going to spoil my birthday party talking about end of the world. And Jury's like, well, the duel's scheduled for tomorrow night. I got to get my opera glasses ready. And then he's like, oh, look, it's you two. Glad you could join us. I like how cordial they all are. Jury and Miki are talking about fighting Utena to get control of Anthe. And they show up at the birthday party and they're like, oh, hey, don't mind us plotting your demise. Never mind that. And I like that Utena says, don't get the wrong idea. And of course he's like he is a cat. And she's like, I just wish you well. And I never got to say thanks for saving me. So here are these flowers. And of course, Kiryuu thinks that's hilarious. He's like, of course you would say that. Of course that's how you'd answer. And he laughs just loud enough where Nanami can hear. And of course, Choo Choo is having like the best time. I like that Sailor Pluto's over here watching Choo Choo with all of this food here, having a great old time. And she's like, what's so funny? And he's like, oh, well, that's so typical that you'd say it exactly like that. And she's like, are you making fun of me? And he's like, no, I'm just happy you're here. And she's like, well, what's that supposed to mean? She's like, you're making fun of me, but you're glad I'm here? Of course he's glad that she's there because she's going to be the catalyst to get Nanami to become a duelist. That's why. And then Nanami walks over with them yellow pumps. And the thing that gets me is that Kiryuu says nothing. She goes to this whole spiel. Kiryuu does not correct her. He doesn't say, hey, you're wrong. This is really what it is. Nope. He lets it all go because he wants this to escalate. He wants it to get out of hand because he wants her to be like empowered. I like that we see the three girls that are her posse in the background. She's like, what a shameful woman. And Utena's like, I brought your brother flowers, bitch. Is this your way of trying to seduce him? And Utena's like, no. Now, he does say give it a rest already. And she's like, well, you can give it a rest. She's the one that hurt you. And I like that Utena's like, well, actually it was Saionji. And Saionji's like coughing off in a bar somewhere. No, he's probably practicing kendo at home. And she's like, well, that's not true. And that's when Anthy says it was Saionji, not Utena. Like, trying to set the record straight. And Nanami smacks her too. Poor Anthy gets smacked upside the head so much in this series. I'm like, leave her alone. I do like that the ribbon on the box with the cat is yellow to match the gift that Nanami gave, and Nanami's color is yellow. It's like, oh my god. And then she says, well, you're the root of this anyway. And that's when she sees the box and is reminded of the kitten. And Utena's like, what are you doing? She's like, well, I'll never let you have him. I'll never let someone like you have my brother. And then everybody's like, is that true? Is it the both of them? The both of them are trying to get at Kiryuu at the same time? We knew he had threesomes, but not out in public. Damn. Anyway, so all the gossiping going on. And Kiryuu does not say a word. And Utena's like, there's nothing between us. And Kiryuu's just sitting there just soaking it up. He's just like, The worst part about it in this moment is Utena's basically saying like, no, I'm not interested in him at all. Why would I be interested in him? What's so fascinating about it is that I think that's one of the reasons he kind of is into Tina, is because she doesn't want him. I think that's why he pushes Saionji away, because he knows Saionji likes him, and he knows that Nanami likes him, so he pushes her away too. And all these other women that throw themselves at him, he uses them, but he doesn't love them. And I think he's attracted to Utena because she's the first person that's like, I'm not into him at all. I'm just trying to be nice to him. And I feel like his whole life, he's just had people coddle him to try to get something out of him. And she's the first person to not do that to him, and he's kind of drawn to it. It reminds me of the Apothecary Diaries a little bit, like with Jinshi and Mao Mao, the two main characters, except this is like if Jinshi was a bitch. That's basically what this is. Because Kiryuu's like, because you'd think he'd feel insulted by it, but I think he actually, that's what he likes about Utena, right? But Nanami gets pissed. Nanami is pissed. She's furious. Mickey and Juri are like, we really have no dog in this fight, so what are we gonna do? And then we have like the little, our French intermission. So Nanami's out by the yellow roses, color-coded to our pleasure. And that's when Kiryuu's like, well, is it because I always spoil her? And I'm like, well, it's because you don't say things to her. He's like, it is a bit weird for me to be saying this, but Nanami appears to have never outgrown her brother worship. Having the best older brother in the world makes everyone else look like small fry. And Kiryuu's like, oh, did Mickey say that? I was like, I like these. Like, Juri wouldn't have said that. Saionji wouldn't have said that, so it must have been Mickey. And she's like, who knows? And he's like, oh, well, Mickey talks too much. And he's telling you too many things. He'll be the next to go. And then he's like, well, this reminds me of another birthday. And that's when Nanami got him the kitten, who ended up supposedly running away. The kitten disappeared soon after, which we find out later what happened to the kitten. It wasn't that it ran away. We find out what actually happened to the kitten, which we'll talk about in a second. And that's when Anthy shows up. She's like, oh, and Anthy, of course, is like, I missed my cue to give you this. Anthy is like a NPC in a game. She's like a non-playable character that has a duty to say certain things and do certain things. And if you don't get her to do that, she'll show up anyway and be like, okay, we can't have this glitch in the Matrix. I missed my cue to give you this present as I'm supposed to. Which is interesting. And that's when Nanami hears the kitten. And of course, happy birthday with the rose. And Kiryuu's like, oh, the little kitten with the little green bow. Yeah. And Kiryuu looking so happy and laughing is such a weird sight to see. And she's like, do you not like cats? And he's like, oh no, on the contrary, I love pussy. That is... I couldn't pass up that joke. I'm sorry. Kiryuu's like, nope, best present ever. What a lovely present. And then Nanami, of course, is like, bitch, this is 2.0. So then we get Nanami's first taste of jealousy. And of course, it's Garden of Eden, the apples, the snakes. Like, just only it's a cat instead of a snake. I love it. I love that for the first time. It's like, yeah, it's very almost biblical symbolism of her experiencing jealousy, where she realized that he was sharing his love with something else other than her. And it was the cat. And she was like, come on, let's pick some apples. And he's like, not later. She's like, but I can't reach him. He's like, I'm playing with this little guy right now. And her smacking him, he gets onto her and says, I was just playing. And then he tells her to go away. And Nanami she couldn't take it. But the fact that she killed the cat. She killed the cat. She put it in the box and kicked it into the river. She jinxed herself. She cursed herself. That's why she is now suffering the penance for her sins. That's why she's being targeted by every animal in the series, because she's a murderer. So, what we have here is Saionji. When we talk about flaws, Saionji's flaw is mainly that he is physically abusive and very quick to anger. He's very emotional, quick to anger, physically abusive. That's Saionji's biggest qualms. What I like about this show is it gives us characters that are very rounded. So there are attributes about them that you either feel sorry for them, or you feel empathy, or you connect to. But then there are other aspects about them you're like, oh, that makes you a very flawed person. And Saionji's is that he does get quick to anger and can get physically abusive, which is not cool. Nanami's is her jealousy. To the point of murder. And attempted murder. Girl was trying to shank Utena, and I was like, this is just a duel, but you're taking this way too far. Like, her thing is jealousy, and his is anger and emotions. Then you have Mickey and Juri. I would say that they are not as extreme as Saionji and Nanami, but with Mickey, his whole thing is that he gets very stuck in his ways. He is stuck in the past, and he does not want to move forward from it. That was his whole ordeal in his episodes, and even now, once he gets settled on something, it's kind of hard to get him to accept something else. He's kind of stuck in his ways. That's kind of his biggest flaw. Then with Juri, it's the idea that she kind of is similar to Mickey in a way, but she is very stubborn. She is very stubborn, and it is going to be her way. And by her way, I mean, in her mind, once she is set on something, that is the way that she is going to think about that something. So whereas Mickey is stuck in the past and he can't quite get over that hurdle and he stays fixated and focused on it to a point of extremity, you have Juri, who, it doesn't matter if it's past, present, or future, if she believes something, even if it's something negative about herself, about someone else, she sticks by it, and she's very persistent with it. Persistence to like a negative attribute almost, which is problematic. So, but yeah, then you have Kiryuu, who is just a entire kaleidoscope of problems that we could write a whole novel about. We probably will by the time this series is over. But she's like, my brother belongs to me and only me. And that's a problem because, again, as we've established with Anthe, people don't belong to people, and you can't monopolize people. That's not how this works. What gets me about the whole end of the world duel with Nanami, which is, again, why I wonder if Kiryuu didn't forge this letter as well. Has he been forging letters the entire time to set all of this up to try to lure out the prince? Has he set this whole thing up? Did he give all these people rings? Did he gather them all together? Did he start this whole thing trying to find where the prince was and to get a hold of the power of Dios? Is all of this just his orchestration to get this all? Because I'm like, Nanami doesn't want Anthe. She hates Anthe. She wants nothing to do with Anthe. She doesn't even want eternity. Like, her precious thing is her brother's love. That is her eternity. But she doesn't want to, like, the power to revolutionize the world. She just wants the power to revolutionize her and her brother's relationship. So, and I guess that is her world, I guess you could say. So maybe it does fit. But Nanami wants to not duel Utena to get a hold of Anthe. She wants to duel Utena because she's pissed. And I'm like, does that fall within the parameters of the rules? I don't think that it does. But the other two kind of accept it, so because she has the seal, I feel like Kiryuu just made all of these rules up, and that's where we're at. And they're like, well, don't get caught up in trouble. You'll get kicked out like Saionji did. And that's when Kiryuu is like, well, you know, we have to follow the Academy's rules, you know. And that's when he gives her the ring. And and she's like, have you forgotten, Nanami? Only ones authorized to duel at this academy are those who wear the rose seal. So apparently, does everybody know about the rose seal? Does everybody know about this ring? Is this common knowledge on campus? Or does Nanami only know because Kiryuu's in the know along with the student council and she's known about them? She's like, now show me your power as the end of the world's chosen. And Mickey and Juri are like, what? And like, you're going to have a duel. And I love that Utena's like, fine. I guess at this point, we're just going to do it. Fine. So, we have the Shadow Girls, our Greek choir. They talk about the kitten that they found, and they try to give it like a funny name, but they can't end up thinking of a name, and they just stick with Mittens, which my parents have a cat named Mittens, so that's really funny. But then at the end, they say Juliano, which I want to know. I was going to look this up anyway, because we have those. I didn't even look at the lyrics during this episode, so we're going to be looking up all sorts of words. But Juliano, as a name, what does that mean? It's basically a variant of Julius's, or Jove's child. Could also refer to Jupiter, the king of gods, and the gods of thunder and the sky. Youthful. Which would tie into this episode quite a bit. You have the story of Kiryuu and NANAMI'S youth, connecting back to all of that. That all makes sense. Sure. But then I'm so glad we get to go back to the tower and the apocalypse song. It's been so long, right? So we get up to the top. Things go as one would expect. We're ready to duel. Nanami gets her own uniform. Nanami went into the closet, got her own uniform, thigh-high black boots, the black and yellow. She's like a bumblebee. She's like a little bumblebee. She also reminds me of Soy Phone from Bleach with the bee theme. Just a wee bit. Which would also, oh my god. Which would also make sense if she's like Soy Phone, because Yaruichi in Bleach is tied to a cat theme, which ties to Kiryuu and the cat in this episode. It's all adding up. So yeah. So anyway, we have our song now. And I like Utena's like, do we have to do this? Utena's like, at this point, do we have to do these duels? We know this is going to end. And she's like, you're always hanging around my brother and your eyesores. But I'm like, again, how is battling Utena and gaining control of Anthe keeping them from hanging out with Kiryuu? Girl, I don't think you thought this out. And Utena looks over to Kiryuu like, are you going to do anything? Are you going to stop this? Because this seems rather pointless. And Kiryuu says nothing at all. And Anthe's like, look, this duel's going on whether we like it or not. The duelist has been summoned. And so she talks about the power of Dios and time to manifest. And here's the sword. And Utena's like, fine, I'll just grab this sword out of your chest. And here we go. Okay. So, and then the bells ring and the duel is on. I want to actually see if we have any new lyrics that go along with this episode and what we get here. So, I do like the fact that we tied to Nanami having watched her brother all these years and imitating him. That works. I was like, how does Nanami know how to fight and fight decent? But no, that checks out. And she also had a knife hidden in her breast coat, ready to shank someone. So, sure. We'll go with it. So, Genesis of Earth, stage props. So, if we talk about, I like the idea of props and the start of the world. I like the concept here that we have, like, all the world's a stage, right? Mm-hmm. And so then we have Laplace's nebula, spectatorship theory. So I want to get into that. Let me get this on here. Laplace's, what do we got here? Laplace's nebula. It's probably going to be, these are theories. The nebular theory of Laplace is a theory that explains the formation of our solar system. It states that a large cloud of gas and dust collapse under its own gravity to form our sun and planets. Oh, it's a French theory. Okay. So basically, just the creation of the Big Bang, the creation of time and space, right? Okay, and then spectatorship theory. I was wondering if spectatorship was like the fact that, Kiryuu's doing nothing to get in the way of this. This theory proposes that when we watch a film, we do so from the perspective of many different selves, each of which gains a particular pleasure from the experience. Oh, okay. There's like a whole thing on it. The complexities of the experience of watching a TV or film. It considers how different circumstances and contextual factors such as age, gender, ethnicity, and where you are watching from can impact the viewing experience. It also considers how filmmakers may manipulate spectators, such as by asking the question of whether the spectators are puppets in the hands of directors. Oh, so I mean, this is Kiryuu right here. Kiryuu is manipulating this whole scenario to try to figure out stuff about the power of Dios. So yeah, basically, we as the audience, we are seeing how Kiryuu is manipulating the entire thing. Okay. An immutable illusion, a riddle-solving clock. Yeah, like we're running out of time. Kiryuu's trying to figure everything out. He's watching now close up and using his sister to figure all this out. An immutable illusion. Like, yeah. The baby carriage at immortality's edge. Oh my god, yes. I love it. Like, it's all Kiryuu trying to figure out the power of God so he can harness it himself for whatever reason, right? We still don't know all about Kiryuu's motives, but the fact that he would use his sister knowingly to gather this and possibly get... Because he could have gotten her expelled, right? If something had happened to Utena and she managed to get injured or hurt, Nanami would have gotten expelled from the school. And he was willing to do that, to risk that. My eternal self. And then what else do we get on these lyrics? The eternal stranger. We've had that one before. And then that's when two relations, two births. So two relations and two births. So is that suggesting that Anthy and the prince are twins? That they're twins separated at birth? What are we getting out of this? In any case, you have the ring that Utena's holding starts to activate, and that's when the power of the prince comes down, right? And then Kiryuu, he notices that when the ring activates like that, the prince comes down, he notices it. A mysterious scale, a constellation of the human body. And that's when she causes the sword of NANAMI'S, which is kind of like a little curved sword. It's really cool. Rapier. To fall beside her. And that's when Utena wins. Yep. And the sword falls and the rose gets plucked. And the bells signify that the duel is over. But yeah. So Utena's like, well, the fight's over. That's all we got. But those shoes are so bitching. And Nanami's like, no, she grabs that knife and literally you see blood spurt. She cuts Utena. And Anthy, I like that Anthy gets concerned. Anthy shows like, oh no. Someone noted in the comments a few weeks ago that Anthy didn't really have a reaction to anybody else before, but Utena's kind of like the first person that Anthy's really noticed in these matches and kind of rooted for or had open, emotions towards. And she's like, you can't do that, Nanami-san. You've lost once the rose is stricken from your chest. And again, Kiryuu says nothing. And she's like, I don't give a damn. She's like, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. And it says, what did it say there? It says, time is the hypothetical illusion of the newborn stage prop. Okay. Destiny, choices, and the theory of goodbyes. So it's basically like saying like everyone, like new props being born, new people to be used being created, their destiny of these people, choices they're going to make, the theory of, I wonder if the theory of goodbyes is a thing or if that's just words. Theory of goodbyes. The strange, weird theory of goodbye. There's a couple things on here, but nothing that really comes like outright. Okay. What else we got here? And then she manages to strike off Utena. She's like, you and I are the Milky Way. No past, no future. We live solely for today. Which sounds kind of like Anthe and Utena. Sounds kind of like both of them, that we don't really know much about their past. We don't really know anything about their future, and all we do is knowing them in the present. But damn, Nanami is a fierce opponent for sure. All alone in the theater of the cosmos. Sounds very Puella Magi Madoka Magica, if I'm not gonna lie, between Utena and Anthe, but we'll see. But yeah, it's like, why keep fighting? And they're like, that's me. Wait, my last evolution, revolution, evolution. Is evolution? Evolution is a software team. Is there a meaning? There's what does it say here? I wish evolution would give us something, but it does not. Evolution, the distinct. Oh, I want to see what does it say? Getting something here. That's a group. I wish I could get some more. Well, darn it. Oh, is it something from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy about the meaning of life? Maybe that's what it's tied to. Interesting. I find it. We've got revolution for Revolutionary Girl Utena and the evolution of characters. Maybe evolution is tied to the meaning of life then. And just as she's about to like hurt Utena, that's when Kiryuu's like, no. And it ends up cutting her braid. Cuts her braid off. Almost as punishment, her hair gets snapped because she was getting too emotional and too tied up in it. But yeah, she actually killed the kitten. I thought for a second she was gonna save the kitten. I saw when we cut back to the kitten on the edge of the dam there. I was like, oh, okay, she's gonna save the kitten. We just thought she was gonna kill the kitten, but she's not gonna kill the kitten, right? She did. And then she said, you came between me and my big brother. Oh, and that crow's like, bitch actually did it. Damn. And that's why she's just, I like that her hair's all down and all messed up. And Utena's like, why did it get to this way? She's like, I don't like your brother. What's going on? What's happening? But that preview, I'm like, Utena clearly doesn't like Kiryuu that way. She's always said that. And I'm like, Kiryuu, you know your sister is driven insane by you being around Utena and Anthe. You know that. I think Nanami can turn away from the other women because she knows that they're just, either she doesn't know about the other women or she's just like, whatever, they're just a bunch of hoes, they don't matter. But she knows how good Utena and Anthe are and she can't stand it. So I'm like, is Nanami just going to try to get with Utena is Kiryuu going to try to get with Utena to make Nanami so mad that she makes a mistake and gets expelled as well? I don't know. We're going to have to find out, but I feel, I mean, Utena's kind of like, oh, she's like, I can still win. And that's when Kiryuu's like, oh, you silly girl. There's no need for you to fight any longer. And he's like, I'll protect you. I feel like this is really interesting because you have Nanami kind of acting a little bit like Utena from episodes past, where Utena was like, I'm going to keep fighting no matter what. I can still fight. I'm going to keep going until I win, and I'm not going to give up. And Nanami's kind of doing the same thing here. And Kiryuu almost seems to show up just at the right moment to reinforce this kind of sort of patriarchal, like, oh, silly girl, you don't need to protect people because you have a big, strong man to protect you. You don't have to do anything like that because there's a man here. And I don't think that Utena is eventually, I think that it might be for a while Utena's in a slump and she's like, well, am I going to be able to protect anybody, or do I need a big strong man like Kiryuu to protect me, or what am I supposed to do? I think she's going to be in a funk for a while about it, but we're only on episode 10. I think Utena's eventually going to be like, no, I don't need a big strong man to protect me. I can protect myself. And I think that's going to be, because right now Utena has been kind of hiding behind this persona of, I have to, in order to be strong and in order to protect people, I have to be masculine. I have to wear the shorts. I have to act like a prince. I have to put on this persona in order to protect people. But I think that the end goal is she's going to get to the point where she's like, I don't have to project masculinity to protect people. I can do that by myself, and I don't need to project that. That doesn't need to be me. So I just need to be myself, and I can protect people as myself. But Kiryuu likes to project that, so that's going to be very, very interesting to see what ends up happening with that. And poor Nanami. Yeah. So it showed the box opening up, and then I'm like, was the cat in the box? I'm assuming it was, because she said, forgive me, big brother. Yep. And of course, Kiryuu's like, I didn't care about that bitch-ass cat anyway. I mean, Kiryuu is devious. He is devious. And he's like, oh, it's okay now. And she's like, oh, well, you can act like a good brother sometimes. I'm like, oh, Tina, I don't know if he can. That's just nice of you to assume that about him. He's like, oh, I can't ignore a damsel in distress. It's just the prince in me. Again, he fosters that notion that you have to be a prince to protect someone, and that being a damsel in distress is something tied to femininity. And he's reinforcing that stereotype. And Utena, of course, is just kind of left stunned like, I don't want to be a damsel in distress and be powerless. But damn, Kiryuu is just stirring the pot and making her feel conflicted about this. And then he's like, I've gathered all the data I need. The power of Dios will be mine. So what do we mean by that? What does it mean? What are we doing? What are we gonna do, show? Ah! Oh my god. Oh my god. You know. Kiryuu, I love Kiryuu as a character. He is so fascinating, and we're seeing so much of him in the show, but at the same time, while we're seeing so much of him, we also don't know anything about him. So, I mean, we know little things, but not like what he's thinking inside, what his motivations are. We still don't know anything like that. So, yeah, I think it's going to be option A. I think we've gotten on the roller coaster and we're going to be on it for a while. But I'm really excited about it. So I guess we'll just wait and see what we get next week with episode 11. But end of 1/4, end of Act 1. And that, oh wow, that is a really good end of Act 1, because literally we've set up all the characters, we've set up some things about them, and now we've set up the conflict, and we've set up our antagonist Kiryuu and his goal. His goal is to get the power of Dios. We don't know why. We don't know how he thinks he's going to do it, but that's his goal. And we've set up a little bit of conflict with Utena, where she's like, what do I do? And then we've set up Anthe and how that power works. We've set up these other characters. We've set up Nanami, and we've kind of explored all of the characters and all of their, like, backstories at this point. And now that we have all the introductions out of the way, we know what our antagonist, Kiryuu's our antagonist. We know what his plans are somehow. And now we're going to move forward into Act 2, where we explore that conflict. Exciting! So, one quick thing here is that in the ED, if you notice, it does look like Utena is, again, the princess, the damsel in distress, and the handsome prince is the one that's saving her. And both her and Anthe have the same crown, the same dress, only hers is pink and Anthe's is red. 2 different colors of roses. But they both seem like they're tied to this, like, projection of femininity, damsel in distress, and kind of like, oh, poor helpless us, come save us, handsome prince. and the prince does the same for both of them. Can the prince be the power of Dios to combine inside of both of them? Maybe. We'll just have to wait and see. I would be curious to see if at some point Anthy saves Utena, but Anthy doesn't have hardly any doesn't exactly have any agency yet. So can the power of Dios transfer from person to person? Can it transfer from Anthy to Utena? I don't know. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. But I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'll be back real soon with episode 11 of Revolutionary Girl Utena. Bye.